Making sure I'm all good. All right, I am all good. Instagrammers, what's going on? You guys are about to get a little behind the scenes action. I'm about to jump in a podcast with my good man Lloyd over in the UK. What part of the UK are you in at the moment, Lloyd?
Wales, so South Wales, not New South
Welsh,
Wales, just South Wales.
not New South Wales. The original Wales.
Yeah,
Over in,
yeah,
he's in lockdown at the moment. He's actually at the gym. He's not supposed to be at the gym. So I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to be doing this IG live, but fuck it, we're here. Real quick, man, what's your Instagram handle so that my Instagram live people can go check you out?
It'd be LT Fitness __. I'm assuming you don't need the 2 underscores. You should see me before you get that far.
There you go. So at LT, the letter L, the letter T, fitness __. And that's my man Lloyd. All right, over to you, brother. Let's fire up the podcast.
Let's go. Okay. Welcome to the Further Your Fitness podcast. I am your host, Lloyd Thomas, and today I have a very special guest with me. I'm going to need to take a deep breath for this intro because it's a pretty big one. He is an IFBB men's physique pro athlete, the host and creator of the Fitness Times Business podcast, of which the link will be in the show notes, a graduate of both engineering and law, CEO of both Massive Joe's and TMJ Apparel. I'm assuming I've missed something out somehow there, but he is, of course, Mr. Joseph Mencel. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the massive intro. It's very much appreciated. I think you captured everything in there, so thank you.
Good. I'm actually quite surprised, both surprised and not surprised. I've not missed something out there. I'm assuming there's some
well,
somewhere.
I think actually, technically, IFBB Pro League promoter as well. That's just a little,
of course,
little thing we can kind of add on to the end there.
Yeah,
that's what I do in my spare time a couple of times a year.
I was running out of space on my notes there. So I think the last time we kind of crossed paths was Body Power. It's so confusing with the whole pandemic, but 2019. Yeah. I was actually telling a story.
So the last Body Power I went to was 2019 because obviously it didn't happen last year. Body Power is usually in May, towards the end of May every year, and by the time we were in May 2020, no one was traveling anywhere because of COVID. So it would have been 19, man. Yeah, that was the last time that I was over there in the UK. That was an awesome Body Power as well. I had a really good time that year.
I know. I actually jumped in for the listeners. I was telling a story to my brother-in-law the other day. I jumped in on one of your chest sessions. I think it was the Friday. My brother-in-law joined me on the Saturday, and he asked me how I was feeling. I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I kept up fairly well, feeling quite proud of myself. And as the day slowly wore on, the DOMs in my chest were like creeping in, just like when you get the anterior delt kind of, and then just slowly you could feel it spreading. It was a really good session. I really enjoyed.
You can actually feel the delay of the delayed onset muscle soreness. That's when you know you've had an awesome workout, when it happens like
that. Little known fact as well, the original name of this podcast is actually based on one of your kind of sayings, and the t-shirt I actually bought from TMJ Apparel, which
I
was
see I see you repping the TMJ at the moment.
Yeah.
You got the long sleeve
tee. Yeah, my girlfriend actually bought 2 of my your t-shirts for my 30th.
She's a keeper.
Definitely. There you go. That's a good endorsement. The previous name of this podcast was based on your theory. Well, it's not theory. The If It Fits Your Lifestyle.
Yeah.
So that really resonated with me because one of my, as a coach and as a trainer, one of the things I fully believe in is if it's abrasive to you, then it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So I think I had to seek out that t-shirt, and then the podcast was called, I can't even remember, this is why I changed it. The Fitness to Fit Your Lifestyle podcast, which is a bit of a mouthful and hard to find, so I changed it. But in a way, one of your sayings inspired this podcast. So
Awesome, man. Awesome.
yeah.
Very happy to hear.
So I've actually brought you onto the show as a bit of a different spin on things. I know you like to say flip the script, so I'm going to flip the script on yourself and
Do
and kind of talk about fitness and business and how they kind of interflow. So we're going to start with fitness, and it's a bit of a strange question to anyone who doesn't know much about you. So how does one go from aiming to be in the NBA to becoming an IFBB men's physique pro athlete?
Yeah. Man, I grew up playing basketball. So some of my earliest childhood memories are with the basketball, just messing around. I think I was given my first basketball as a Christmas gift when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I reckon. And so I always had a basketball in my hand, grew up playing, as soon as I could play competitively. I was 9 or 10 years old at the time. Actually, I was probably even younger than that, maybe 8 or 9 years old. I started playing competitively under 12s, district clubs, and kind of just basketball was my life growing up from my earliest childhood memories until, I got to the point where I could no longer play. And so I was playing, district teams, state teams, high school teams, toured the US a couple of times. I was like, basketball was everything to me. And I probably played a little bit too much because I developed a couple of injuries. The first injury was a stress fracture in my lower back. So for those of you who are interested in the spine and have a little bit of knowledge, L5 on S1. So it's one of the really like the vertebrae in the base of your spine. And so I developed this first stress fracture when I was 14. And it's not that big a deal. Most people that play high impact sports develop these sorts of stress fractures in their back. It's quite common in basketball, football. Funnily enough, cricketers generally have stress fractures in their lower back, especially fast bowlers. But anyway, not a big deal. Continued playing. Then when I was 18 years old, I was caught up in, it was actually a practice. I remember it vividly like it was yesterday. It was a practice scrimmage, and I got caught up in a little box out situation with the biggest guy on our teams. We were boxing out. I was boxing him out, trying to get a rebound, and he was a lot bigger than me. And he kind of just like threw me around and threw me to the floor. And as soon as I hit the floor, I just like, I couldn't move. And I was just, like plastered to the floor, and a couple of guys came over and kind of helped me up. And as I'm walking away, like I couldn't properly walk, and I was like, man, this is not good. And so what I ended up doing was another stress fracture on the exact same vertebrae in my lower back. Once you get two stress fractures on the exact same vertebrae, the vertebrae is effectively loose in your spine. There's nothing anchoring it apart from your spinal cord. So the risk of paralysis or serious injury is very, very high. So when I did that, obviously went through all the doctors and the physios and all that sort of thing, and got the diagnosis, had X-rays and all that, got the diagnosis, and it was like, well, now you've got two stress fractures on this vertebrae. You can't play basketball anymore. As a matter of fact, you can't do any high impact sport anymore because the risk of injury is too high. And if you do an injury, the risk of it being very, very serious is too high as well. So that was it. By the time I was 18, my childhood dream, which, was my first dream, just came to a screeching halt when I did that injury. So the reason why I tell that story is because I was introduced into weight training for basketball. So coming up, I think the first sort of resistance-based training that I started doing must have been 13 or 14 years old, just, push-ups, pull-ups, that sort of thing. And then as I kind of got older, got into the gym, started working out with weights and started building my body from a strength and conditioning perspective for basketball to make me a better basketballer. So I could, push my weight around, I could jump, all of those sorts of performance-based athletic abilities that you build when you're doing strength and conditioning based work. Now, anyone who's watching or listening who has a performance sports background would know that when it comes to strength and conditioning, and in particular weight training, it's extremely polarizing. You either love it as a performance athlete, or you just absolutely hate it. There's no in between. So I got that just hated it, man. Like the day the gym was the worst day of the week. They just wanted to be on the court, shooting around, scrimmaging. And when they had to go into the gym, it was like, they'd rather die than go into the gym. Me personally, I loved it. I enjoyed seeing my body develop. I enjoyed getting stronger. And from a young age as well, I remember that I was always really inspired by probably like superheroes, like Batman, Superman, like these larger than life superheroes who also have these larger than life physiques, right? And then obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, those kind of bodybuilders coming up in the 80s and 90s. And, I obviously I didn't have physique like that when I was, coming up as a teenager, but I could see my body developing and kind of, building muscles where I never had muscles before and just getting bigger and stronger. And I really fell in love with it. So I was the guy that really enjoyed the strength and conditioning, really loved being in the gym, really loved lifting weights. So when I did the second injury that brought my basketball dream and my basketball career to an abrupt end, the advice that I was given to stay fit and healthy, because I couldn't do anything high impact because of the stress fractures, was lift weights, right? So just go spend more time in the gym and just lift weights. And I was cool with that, because obviously I wasn't cool with ending my basketball dream, but I was cool with having something else to use as a physical outlet. So I started spending more time in the gym. And very quickly, I really missed the competitive side of competitive sports, right? Because I wasn't playing, I used to play, 3-4 games a week at my peak as a teenager, and that was just taken away. So I had no competitive outlet physically. So when you're in the gym, you're lifting weights, you've got two options competitively, generally speaking. It's either bodybuilding or it's powerlifting, or maybe even strongman. But, you're either going for physique-based sports or you're going strength-based sports. And with that, I guess, being inspired by these superhuman type physiques, I decided to give bodybuilding a shot. So I knew nothing about bodybuilding at the time. So I had to figure out, how do you even compete in a bodybuilding show? And this is the early 2000s as well. So bodybuilding competitions were definitely not as common as they are now. Did some research. Yeah, man. Did some research, found out, the local shows, figured out, the tan and shaving your body and the different poses and just everything, because I'm completely new to this new sport. And I trained for and I competed in my first show in the teenage division. I did quite well starting off, and then went back the next year, and then kind of came up through the age rankings, because at the time, there was no men's physique. There was no fitness. There wasn't even, in the females, there wasn't bikini back then. It was men's bodybuilding and women's bodybuilding and the age categories. And that's it. It was like, if you were doing a bodybuilding show, you were competing in bodybuilding. There were none of these other, other divisions. And so I kind of came up, did the teenagers, did the juniors, jumped into the opens when I think the first competition I did in the opens was when I was like 22 or 23, and kind of, got better and better. And then what I found, what was happening is I was kind of disadvantaged because of my height when it came to bodybuilding. Being a natural athlete in that sport, height is quite an advantage when you're playing basketball. When you're bodybuilding, it's not. So I would, I'd get to the point where I'd win my class, my height class, and then I'd come into overalls and I'd be up against guys who were, I'm 6'2", so I'd be up against guys that were 5'7", 5'8", 5'9", much shorter than me, and they beat me in the overalls because I'm too tall. I just couldn't fill out my physique. And so I'd kind of stepped away from the sport at that time. So that would have been 2000 and the early 2010s. So I'm going to say like 2011, maybe 2012. And I kind of stepped away from the sport because I was like, man, I'm not really enjoying this anymore. I'm kind of hitting, at the time it felt like a bit of a glass ceiling for me. I was, winning and then come up against this glass ceiling, couldn't win overalls. And so I kept training and whatnot, but kind of stepped away from competing. And then the IFBB in 2012 12, I think, in the US, introduced a new division in the men's class, and that was men's physique. And so it started in the US. Obviously, they had the first IFBB Men's Physique Olympia in 2012 or 2013. And then it made its way to Australia in 2014. And I was like, okay, now I think, this is a new division, a new class that kind of favors taller athletes, broader shoulders, smaller waist, more athletic type physiques, not overly muscular physiques that obviously is bodybuilding. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring and give this a red hot crack. And so I got back into competing in 2014. I did the very first IFBB show that we had here in Australia in men's physique. And I set myself a goal. I was like, you know what, if I'm gonna get back into competing, I'm not doing this to take the piss. Like I got to figure out how I get to be one of the best in the world at this. So, figured out how to become a pro. And to become a pro in Australia, you have to win everything, right? You have to, for a particular season, you got to win state, you got to win nationals, you got to win Oceania, you got to win overall, you got to clean sweep everything. And so I set myself a goal in 2014. I was like, I'm going to compete for the next 5 years. And in 5 years, my goal is to turn pro in the IFBB. So I did 2014, 2015, 2016, and then year number 4, 2017, I clean swept. So I won the state title, the national title, the Oceania, the overall, and got my IFBB pro card at the end of 2017. And so that answers your question. Very long format.
I suppose the great thing about kind of bodybuilding, the bodybuilding space, is the fact that, if you play a performance sport like your soccer, your football, your rugby, AFL, if you've got talent, you can turn up on a Saturday and you can do a job. You can live off that kind of just the 90 minutes, the 2 hours to perform. But I suppose the great thing about bodybuilding is you have to do that every single day. So was it quite a sort of an emotional kind of journey? And once you would, I know obviously you're still going and there's still goals, but finally getting that pro card after, I suppose, 10 plus years, 15 years maybe of hard work.
It was actually
dedication.
It was my 13th year of competing. So I started competing in 2004, actually 14 years. 2004 was my first competition. And then I won my pro card at the end of 2017. So inclusively, it was, I didn't compete every year for 14 years, but from the start of, being a teenage amateur natural bodybuilder to winning an IFBB pro card, for me personally took 14 years of that lifestyle.
Was that quite an emotional feeling then when you finally got that?
One of the things that I'm so grateful for for that particular show was I did a couple of things. So I vlogged the entire journey for 2017. So I've got video records of the in vlog format of the whole.
Fairly sure I watched at least most of it.
Yeah. So I did it for a series for the Massive Joe's YouTube channel. So I have all of that in video format archived. And I also had a friend of mine, John C, who used to live in Sydney, come and take photos. And so he got, some of the photos that he took, he was there backstage. So like, as I stepped off the stage, he got, my full expression. Like I remember collapsing to the floor, just like in a combination of exhaustion, relief, elation, bliss. It was just like this massive emotional rush. And he got all photos of that. And I've got those photos. And I'm so grateful that that moment was captured, because it was, a culmination of so many years of living that lifestyle, so many competitions, just so much just went into that. And I think particularly for me, because the year before, 2016, competitively was such a disappointing year for me. I won the state show in 2016 and I went to the national show, and I was kind of next in line to turn pro, and I didn't even place at the nationals. And it was, to me, it felt like a massive step in the wrong direction, a step backwards. So to come back a year later and, you know, and clean sweep everything and win my IFBB Pro card was just, very difficult to articulate the combination and the polarity of emotions that I experienced after doing that. But you're bringing them all back, so I appreciate that.
That's good. We're going to move over to the business side of things now,
Sure.
which, if anything, is even, well, even stranger of a question, because I find this absolutely fascinating. It's how does a man with a law and engineering degree end up being a CEO of a supplement and apparel brand? That's
Man,
fairly
the universe,
unique, I think.
the universe works in mysterious ways. You know, when I first, so there's an overlap between the two stories, because when I transitioned out of basketball, when that dream came to an end and I kind of, you know, started taking interest in bodybuilding, I also started properly supplementing. You know, I used to supplement with like protein powder and whatnot when I was playing basketball, but, you know, never proper supplementation protocols. So I took a real interest in supplementation when I started taking real interest in competitive bodybuilding, for myself personally, to get a competitive edge naturally over the other athletes that I was competing against. So at the time, this is the early 2000s, remember 2003, 2004, in Australia and really every other country apart from the US, supplementation was very, very basic. So you had protein powders that mostly tasted like wet cardboard. If you could get creatine, it was excruciatingly expensive. I remember creatine in Australia at the time was like $1 per gram. So, you know, if you were taking it, like crazy compared to prices today, right? But there wasn't a big selection. So I started doing some research, and at the time, the US, you know, late 90s, early 2000s, the US just exploded when it came to supplementation. So I started importing, at the time, it was BSN, Optimum Nutrition, and Gaspari Nutrition were like the three brands.
Those are the three around that time.
Right.
Only knew
of. 2000s, they owned, you know, they owned the supplement.
Muscle is the only one I could think of in the UK is the fourth.
Yeah. I remember like BSN NO Explode in like the red tub with the yellow lid, graphic labels, and Gaspari Super Pump 250, the golden days of supplements. Anyway, so I started importing those products for me personally to use. Now at the time I was at university, and this is where the join of the two stories comes in. I was at university. I was studying mechanical engineering and law at Adelaide University here in South Australia. And so where I was training for my competitions was the Adelaide University gym, which was, you know, a really, like, everyone knew each other at university, right? So really cliquey type gym. Everyone knew each other by first name. And so, you know, I guess the guys would see me come to the gym. They knew I was training for a bodybuilding competition. You know, I'd come to the gym sipping on a pre-workout supplement when people were, you know, having maybe a shot of coffee. Intra-workout, everyone else is drinking water. I'm drinking colored stuff in a shaker. Post-workout, everyone shoots upstairs to the uni bar for a schnitzel and chips. And I'm sipping on a protein powder, and they see my physique developing and I'm looking better. They start asking me, you know, like, what do you take? What is that stuff you drink when you come to the gym? What are you drinking while you train? What are you having post-workout? And I said, like, this is what I'm doing. I have NO Explode before I train. I have Volume A's was the product, intra-workout, which is like BCAAs and carbs. And post-workout, I'm having Optimum Nutrition Gold Standard Whey. And they said, man, do you mind if, you know, can you get me some? Can you get us some next time you do an order? Sure, no problem. So I start, instead of, you know, a box full of supplements, a couple of boxes, selling them to everyone at the uni gym. And then it turns into more boxes, selling them to everyone at the uni gym. And within a couple of months, I went from importing boxes to importing pallet worth of products, loading up my car, driving to the Adelaide Uni Gym, dropping off orders, driving to the other uni gym in the city in Adelaide, which is Uni SA, dropping off orders, driving down to Flinders University Gym, which is another university in South Australia, dropping off orders. And I was like the guy selling supplements out of the back of his car. all of these
drive either.
Yeah. And so, yeah, at the time, as I mentioned, I was studying mechanical engineering and I was studying law. and kind of doing this juggling act. And then I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial streak ever since I was a kid. I used to do, entrepreneurial shit on a very grassroots level. So, my parents would give me, play money to go and buy food with or whatever. And so I'd take the $20 and I'd go to the supermarket and buy a 24 can of Coca-Cola, and then take that 24 can of Coca-Cola to school and undercut the tuck shop and turn $20 into $40, and just shit like that, right? So I've always, I used to sell wristbands online and iPods and all sorts of shit. So I always kind of had that streak. And when I saw what was happening with the supplements on a grassroots level, I was like, man, I got to take this online, because I'm selling, at the time, significant amounts of products out the back of my car to a very small market, 3 university gyms in one city. So I set up the first supplement store on eBay at the time. Once again, you got to think back like 15 years now, because eBay at the time was, it was auction based. It was the #1 auction website. So I set up the first supplement store in Australia on eBay. And I was selling supplements, and it was auction only. So people were like bidding them up. So I went from selling like pre-workouts locally for $60-$70 at the time to putting the same pre-workouts on eBay. And because I'm dealing with a much bigger market, and I'm the only person supplying the product, people were bidding these pre-workouts up to $130, $140. So I'm selling for twice the price, right? And at the time, I'm like, all right, let's go. Like this is a legitimate business now. And so I did that for multiple years, because I was studying mechanical engineering, and then doing the local supplement runs, started the eBay store, started a website, massivejoes.com, the name, because everyone used to call me at the uni gym, Massive Joe. So I was like, fuck it.
Nickname to have.
And it's the website and whatnot. And so the business kind of kept growing, quite organically with, I guess relatively little input. Like it was really in my spare time when I wasn't studying, when I wasn't working, I would go home and pack orders for the online orders and do my little runs to the local gyms and whatnot. So very, like side hustle. That's what the buzz term at the moment. It was my side hustle.
Yeah.
And then so what happened with my studies? So I finished my engineering degree after 4 years. And I got a placement in my second to last year, in my penultimate year, at an oil and gas company here in South Australia called Santos. And I did quite well in that placement, so much so that they offered me a job in my final year of university to go and work for them. It wasn't full-time, but like in a part-time position. So my final year of university, I'm finishing off my engineering degree. I'm 2 years into a law degree. I'm working at Santos 3 days a week. I'm running Massive Joes in my spare time, and I'm training for and doing bodybuilding competitions. So that was not fun at that point in time, but just trying to pack in as much as I could. So anyway, finished my engineering degree, continued to work at Santos 3 or 4 days a week, finished off my law degree, which took another 3.5 years after that, went and practiced in law for 6 months, decided that I did not enjoy legal practice at all. I really loved the study, but the work was just not, for me personally, man, I don't know how lawyers do it, to be completely honest. But for me, it was just like, I could not picture myself doing that. So I came to a crossroads, right? Because at that point, I finished my mechanical engineering degree. I had a first class honors degree in mechanical engineering and 3.5 years work experience in the oil and gas industry. I had a first class honors degree in law, majored in corporate and intellectual property law, and I had 6 months experience in law, but I knew that wasn't what I was going to do. And then I had my kind of side hustle over here that by that time had grown into multi-millions of dollars of revenue. And I was like, okay, what do I do now? What's the play here? And so one of the most difficult decisions that I ever made, primarily because I had invested so much time into what I thought was going to be my professional career, right? Was engineering, law, whatever that kind of looked like, and effectively turned my back on that and said, you know what, I just need to I need to close that door and I need to completely open and completely walk through this door. And that's the door of business. And that was 2012, the start of 2012. I committed to Massive Joe's full time. And from Massive Joe's, we got into retail stores at that point. I got into distribution. I started TMJ Apparel in 2015. And I guess that's kind of, how I transitioned. And to answer your question, how I went from, an engineer and a lawyer, at least having an engineer degree and a law degree, to owning and running a couple of companies in the fitness space.
Passion wins, I suppose, you could say.
Yeah, wow. It was a big decider for me. During that decision, when I had to decide what am I going to do here, it was a big driver to help me build the courage to kind of close that door on what I had invested all of my 20s in, right? I started university at 18 years old. I was there until I was 27. To turn my back on that, a big driver for that was, what am I really passionate about? What do I wake up thinking about first thing in the morning? What keeps me awake at night? What doesn't feel like work to me? And that was a big driver of that decision.
Definitely. One last thing I'd like to kind of touch on in terms of business is a lot of your kind of time and energy, which I think is incredible, kind of why I was drawn to seeing your stuff. And I know we touched on it when we talked about it, Body Power, is you do free workouts, you do kind of, previously you've done like meal prep ideas, obviously you did the pro prep and all of these things, even though you might be wearing TMJ apparel and you sip on your pre-workouts and you kind of show people what you think, none of that directly sells what keeps your business afloat. So what I'd like to know is I know you obviously place a massive emphasis on providing value.
Yes.
But again, it's helping people, you're not selling supplements to people. Kind of what was the thought process behind and why you do that rather than just say, look, this has got these ingredients, buy it now?
There's a couple of ways to answer that, and there's a couple of different spins on that. I guess first and foremost, when I committed to the business full time, and even a little bit before that, I needed a way to get people's attention that didn't cost me a lot of money, because I didn't have a lot of money. When I started the business, I was 19 years old, right? And by the time I made the decision to commit full time to the business, I was 27. So I didn't have the financial resources of a lot of our, at the time and still now, bigger competitors. So from a competitive advantage perspective, I needed to figure out how to capture people's attention the cheapest way I possibly could. So effectively, I was looking for, as Gary Vee says, he's probably the person that's most quoted as giving this information. I was looking for underpriced attention, and where I could find it was social media. So it started on Facebook. It moved to Instagram and YouTube pretty much at the same time. And so I've always, even now, like, I'm still looking for the best place to get underpriced attention, because it's the quickest way that you can grow a business, especially when you don't have the resources of bigger, more established companies or companies that are underwritten or have investors or whatever it is, that you just don't have access to those resources. So that was a big driver for me in the first place. The second big driver for me kind of sits a little bit, I guess, underneath the pure business layer. And that is why I do what I do. Like I didn't get it. If you think about the story of how I got into the supplement industry, how I got into the fitness industry, I never went out intentionally to create a business. It was never like, I'm going to create a business and I'm going to make as much money as I can in this business. This business is going to be my vehicle to generate money, and I'm going to do it in the fitness space. That was never my intention, even right from the start. My intention was, some guys were trying to improve their physiques. They wanted me to get them supplements to help them do it. And so I did it, right? And that's, right from the very start, it's always been, now I have a lot of rigor and a lot of clarity around, what I call my why I do what I do. And I can quote that to you now, and that is to provide the products and information to help people improve their lives through health and fitness. I didn't always have that much clarity around that. I just kind of knew that it was important to me to help people improve their bodies, right? And I thought, well, if you can improve your body, you feel better about yourself, you get all the positive effects of that, psychologically, physically, mentally, so on and so forth. Now I know that a big driver for why I do what I do, and the reason why I turned my back on engineering and law and committed to this industry, is because it gives me the opportunity to provide products and information to help people use the fitness lifestyle to improve their entire life, right? Their relationships, their careers, physically, psychologically, so on and so forth. And that's why even now I continue to do so much free content and so much, I'm always trying to put out as much value as we possibly can as a business, even though there's a lot of pressure now because of the size of the business to perhaps use my time differently on things that generate direct revenue or direct income.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely comes across that way. And you do feel like a kind of loyalty towards yourselves. Like, obviously you sell products that other places sell products possibly for the same price, but you're more likely to go to you because you've helped so many people, so they're more likely to choose you in an indirect way.
I mean, and even if people don't, like the thing is I don't provide, it's never my intention to provide value and provide information, conditional on the fact that I'm going to get something back. It's never my intention. My intention is I want to provide value and provide information to help people improve their lives through health and fitness. And that's it. That's where it ends for me. If you then decide to come and support my business because you find that, that information is very valuable, that content is very valuable, that's the cherry on top, but it's never the intention, from the start.
Yeah, I suppose as a coach, sometimes, having 50 clients isn't great, but having 10 clients that get results and enjoy your training and your nutrition and things and what you provide is more fulfilling than the money that comes with 50 clients,
Yeah.
So there's definitely a crossover. I suppose the last kind of fairly large topic I'd want to cover is, are there any lessons that fitness has taught you about business or vice versa?
Man, where do I start? We're going to do another episode just on this topic. So many, man. There's so many crossovers between fitness and business. You mentioned in the introduction that one of the things that I do is host a podcast called the Fitness Times Business Podcast. And the motivation for that podcast, it used to be called the Massive Joe Show, back before I kind of took it over in a solo role. And what I kind of noticed through, I think we did almost 50 episodes of the Massive Joe Show. And one of the things that I kind of noticed as a trending theme through the original podcast was the amount of crossovers between what we were discussing in the fitness space and how that played over into the business space, and also vice versa, things that we would discuss in business that had so much application to fitness. And so when that show ended and I wanted to start a new podcast, I was like, man, I'm gonna call it the Fitness Times Business Podcast, because so much of what I talk about already plays right on in the delta of where these two areas intersect. I think, if I had to pick some of the biggest lessons that kind of overlap both, definitely one of them is discipline. I think in order for you to be successful in fitness, whatever that fitness journey looks like, whether it's, general health, whether it's trying to lose weight, whether it's trying to build muscle, if you're a competitive athlete, whether it's, being a competitive athlete, you have to have discipline. You have to be willing to do everything you need to do when you don't feel like doing it. And the crossover to business is exactly the same. The most successful entrepreneurs, the most successful business people, the most successful people in their careers, even if they work for somebody else and they don't run their own business, so much of that is discipline. So much of it is doing shit that you know you need to do when you don't feel like doing it. So definitely discipline is a huge one. I think another one, I'm going to use a buzzword at the moment, grit. Grit is definitely huge, and that can look like most of the time it kind of looks like perseverance. But another huge crossover, those who are the most successful in the business realm are those who are just willing to outstand and outlast the competition and just do shit with more passion for a longer period of time. And I say this so much in fitness, those people who are able to be most successful in the fitness journey are those who are able to stick to their training regime, their dieting regime, their supplement regime for the longest period of time. So that's another massive crossover. I mean, there's so many, man.
Yeah, I suppose
I just
at a
picked the
very
first
basic
that
level.
came into my head, right?
Yeah, basically just asked you to summarize 60 episodes of your podcast in 2 minutes.
In 2 minutes.
Good
Yeah.
luck.
Yeah.
I suppose
It's interesting. I just want to. I'm going to bring another one up because I was actually having this conversation this morning with my partner, and it's a lesson that I was doing. I was actually a guest on a podcast earlier this week, and I was asked a specific question, and I used this analogy, and it was the first time I used it, and I was like, shit, that actually fits, and it was, I've never really noticed it before. But another big one is about the ratio of intense exercise or intense work to rest and recovery. So we know in fitness that you want to train as hard as you possibly can with as much intensity as you can, regardless of your health and fitness goal, for a certain period of time, right? And if you train too long, you start eating into your recovery time. And we all know that the muscle grows and does what you want it to do when you're resting and recovering. You stimulate what you want to stimulate, you rest and recover, and the body responds. The same is very, very true in business and also career. And I think that there's so much, I guess, talk around just working your ass off, consistently, do more hours, put more hours in, sleep less, work more, all of that sort of thing. Whereas what I've found through my business journey, and don't get it twisted, I used to do exactly the same thing, right? I'm notorious for sleeping 4 hours a night and just trying to milk every fucking squirt of juice I can out of each and every day. But as I've kind of developed in my business journey, I've noticed that if I can be super intense and super focused and stimulate what I want to stimulate in my business, or if you're an employee, what you want to stimulate in your career, and then also balance it with other areas of your life, which is like your rest and recovery from your business and your career, and then come back and stimulate with 100% focus and 100% intensity, and then balance it with other areas of your life, you can actually advance a lot quicker in your business and your career than just, trying to grind the fucking stone 24/7.
I think the fitness space is very guilty of that. Like in most fitness coaches, yourselves, it's that mentality. Like you take your intense training, but you couldn't do that for a full day, could you?
No, well, you shouldn't be able to. If you are, the intensity is not high enough, and you're just going through the motions. And the same thing happens in business and career, man. Like you think that you're at a high intensity, but actually you're just going through the motions. You're just dicking around. Your productivity drops.
Exactly.
The crossover between the two is incredible.
Like, I suppose if you worked, say, 14 hours in a day, how much of those 14 hours were you actually working, or did your mind wander?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm that.
Right. We're gonna close out the episode with some quick fire questions. That were a bit of fun to finish off.
Let's go.
Okay. There's one in particular I might stop at because I'm quite interested in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Ready? So, Jordan or LeBron?
Jordan.
Shoulders or legs?
Legs.
Basketball or bodybuilding?
I should say shoulders. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Notorious
for not training legs. Basketball or bodybuilding?
Bodybuilding.
Law or engineering?
Engineering.
Hip hop or metal?
Hip hop.
Oh, see, that was the one, because I know you've recently dabbled in some
I
metal.
still listen. I listen to hip hop much more. I'll turn the metal on when I'm usually my leg workouts. I'll train to the Massive Joe's metal playlist on Spotify. Shameless plug right there. Or, like if I just need to go into the gym and I just need to, release some anger, I'll put metal on. But I don't really listen to metal music outside of the gym. I listen to hip hop all day, every day.
Yeah. I like both, but I'm one of those strange people who could like be chilling in a field with no one around listening to metal. The calmest space ever.
You're like my partner. Amy does exactly the same thing. I'm just like, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning and the metal's blasting. I'm like, what the fuck? Wake up over here.
Yeah, I could be doing like a peaceful yoga session with Parkway Drive blasting, and I'd be completely, there'd be no rage whatsoever.
Cool shit.
Okay, so pre-workout shake or post-workout shake?
Post.
Phil or Ronnie?
Ron.
Ooh, that was it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I've been fortunate enough to spend a bunch of time with Ronnie Coleman. I've also spent a bunch of time with Phil Heath as well. Ron is from a different planet, man. Like, Phil they call Phil the gift because he is incredibly gifted genetically. And, I think that you would be a fool to argue against Phil's work ethic. But Ron is from a different planet.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I've seen some of the documentaries and things, and it's incredible. I suppose he kind of, in a way, I'm not sure what the actual spec is on Ronnie Coleman, or the tail of the tape, but he kind of bucks the trend because he's quite tall, isn't he, for a bodybuilder? Am I right in saying that?
I think Ron's like 5'10". Yeah, and Phil is shorter than Ron, but not by much.
Maybe it's just the way he's built. He looks taller, but 5'10".
He's unbelievable.
If you ask my partner, she classes 5'10" as short because I'm roughly that height. And although she would say that I'm 5'9", but that's another conversation altogether. That is pretty much all we have time for, because I know you're a very busy man. So I appreciate you coming on 100%. I really, really appreciate it. The last thing I'll ask from you is to tell the good listeners where they can find the amazing, incredible list of content you put out there and where we can find you.
Well, yeah, the best, I always say the best place is Google, right? Because you Google something and everything comes up. So, for me personally, if you just Google my name, Joseph Mencel, my Instagram will come up. That's probably where I'm most active, is on my personal Instagram. All of my video series will come up on YouTube. It's all there. So far as the podcast is concerned, it's called the Fitness Times Business. So Fitness X Business podcast. You can find it on any podcasting platform, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud. It's everywhere. And then finally, my business, Massive Joe's, TMJ Apparel. Once again, Google Massive Joe's, Google TMJ Apparel, and everything that you desire will be right there at your fingertips.
Brilliant. And if you're in the UK and you are looking for TMJ Apparel, if you go to A-List Nutrition, they have it.
100%.
They have all your needs. If you like what either myself or Joe are repping right now.
Go show it off.
Yeah. I suppose anyone on listening to this on audio is very confused right now.
Yeah. I have to come
again. Yeah, do both. I really appreciate you coming on, man. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and I hope everything goes well for you this year, and it's a little bit less stressful than last year.
Thank you.
And hopefully
we've been backwards and forwards trying to get this podcast together. We finally got the timing right. We've got a block of time where we can both do it, and it's been a few months in the making. So I'm happy that we were able to connect. And thank you very much for having me on your show.
Cool. If you like this podcast, please give it a share. Tag your grand's dog's cousin, and hopefully I'll see you in the next episode.